So today what I'd like to talk about is the differences that go into public speaking. We can talk about this in terms of speaking situations. So let's sort of imagine a scenario. It's not a wildly unheard of scenario. It's probably being experienced right now by hundreds of thousands of people across the globe, which is the weekly office meeting. All right, so imagine you have to give a presentation at the weekly office meeting. At this presentation, you need to provide an update on the project that you've been working on. Okay? And let's say your project is maybe a little bit over budget and it's certainly over deadline. So you want to have a good presentation. You want to sort of maintain your credibility in the office. You want to look good in front of your office mates and certainly in front of your boss. But there are all sorts of conditions that have gone into this type of presentation. Well, generally it's a business presentation, so you're operating within the genre expectations of what a business presentation looks like in the 21st century. Your office has some specific norms that have emerged. Maybe let's say the room is particularly hot, or one area really smells bad. And everybody tends to stand at the podium and not walk around, so there are expectations. Okay, all of these affect what you're going to be able to do in that presentation. Some of these are big, right? And some of them you can overcome. Maybe you send an email around the night before with your notes for the presentation, so that way people know what you're talking about, so that's helped with clarity. But there are a number of sociocultural issues that are coming to bear on this one individual presentation. That office presentation, by the way, is going to look very different if it's in Riyadh, or if it's in Berlin, or if it's in Caracas, right? So we're talking about public speaking, which is really a very specific response to a specific set of constraints. But we're doing so in a course on Coursera, which is aimed at a global audience. Understanding these speaking situations is key to understanding what this course is about. Now, in an older rendition in rhetorical studies, we called these rhetorical situations. And so the theory was a good speaker is one who responded well to a number of different constraints. These would include the topic, right? So there are certain things that you could say about a particular topic. The audience and what their expectations were for this individual presentation. The occasion, okay? What is the norm of business meetings in general? The setting, the room itself. The speaker's credibility. Did you get caught in a lie 2 weeks ago? That's a constraint you now have to deal with in addressing this audience. And many, many more types of constraints. Now, all of these, by the way, are flexible and shifting. You can affect some of them you adapt to, but the issue is there are so many factors that go into shaping the situation you step into when you deliver a speech. Now, why go into all of this? For this very simple reason. And this is probably something you already know, but it bears repeating. There is no one single form of effective public speaking. There's just not. There's no Esperanto of public speaking. It doesn't exist. So in designing this class that you're now enrolled in, we had to make a couple of decisions. Okay? So we can't teach to the one form of speech that works for all people, across all topics, across all cultures, across all time. We can't teach to that because it doesn't exist. On the other side, we can't teach to every form of public speaking that will work for every speaker across every situation, looking at all these different ways of being successful. Can't do that either. It would take a bajillion years. Okay? So what are we doing instead? In this class, we're going to focus on skills, a couple of key skills. And the idea is you can take these skills with you into these various speaking situations. You can adapt these skills into those various situations. Okay? And the goal is not, and this may sound odd, the goal is not to deliver a good speech. The goal of this course is to become a good speaker. And that's more than simply clever phrasing there. And it is clever phrasing. But the goal is to become a good speaker. So imagine sort of a sports analogy. So my sport was skiing, downhill skiing, although this would work for soccer or any sort of sports analogy. So in skiing, you had to understand what you were doing, but on that given slope, you had to adapt to all the various changes swirling around you. Okay, other skiers coming in, the nature of the mountain, how much visibility you had, how cold it was. If you're in soccer, you want someone who's a good soccer player, not someone who can just kick the ball. right? Because soccer requires a deep skill set and a dynamic sense of judgment, right? You don't just march down the field with the ball, you'll get it taken and you'll look foolish. But instead what you want is someone who can control the ball, who has those core elemental skills, but can adapt to the situation in a fluid and dynamic way. So we're going to be focusing on skills. Now, what are these skills? At the broadest level, these skills are designing clear presentations and delivering them in an engaging way. So, why just these? Why these? Because these are the ones that are going to track across a whole range of speaking situations. What types of speeches are these useful for? Many, if not most. Okay? So, being clear and being engaging, this is tremendously useful when you are designing speech presentations, or when you're speaking in class, or when you're teaching. Anytime you need to be clear and engaging for an audience. Okay? Now, there are some times when maybe these skills are not going to be as useful. Those times might be eulogies, right? That would probably be inappropriate. He was a good man for two reasons. First, that violates those norm expectations. And eulogies, by the way, think about that. That's going to vary wildly from culture to culture, from religious tradition to religious tradition. So, I mean, that's so heavily encoded by those contexts that clear and engaging may not be appropriate. But this is going to work in almost all speech settings where you want to engage that audience and have them understand the nature of your claims, the nature of your points. Now, poetry, right, you may not want to be clear in poetry. No one's reading, Robert Frost's So I Stopped on The Road Less Traveled By. The road less traveled by. Be different. Thank you. Right? That's not what you want. Poetry is about engaging the emotionality of the language. Okay? But in this class, we're going to focus on clear speech and engaging speech. Ultimately, this class emerges from a particular type of tradition. In the next lecture, we're going to be talking about the rhetorical tradition. It's very useful. It's going to affect how we talk through these different assignments. We'll unpack those assignments a little bit more. This is clearly a rhetorical tradition, so that has some Western connotations to it. But we're choosing clarity of speech and engaging delivery. But ultimately, I want this discussion of these skills to blossom into a more robust discussion in the discussion forums and the online forums that we have in this class. So let's get to it.